points of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone. I'm condemned to the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
Welcome along to another episode of Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. I am the Roadie, and I have questions, lots of questions. This week, very special show. Bruce Mahalaski from Dunedin's Museum of Natural Mystery and the Dunedin Strange Occrances Society is my guest. Now, this is a live and in the raw chat I did with Bruce at the museum. I just turned up with my recorder. We sat down in the front room of the museum, had a cup of coffee, surrounded by his interesting and unusual artifacts, and we just chatted about all things about his museum, about the paranormal, etc. So what you hear is basically live in the raw. There's nothing too much edited out. And I should say the music you'll hear on this show mainly this week will be from his band Pretty Trippy, playing some live gigs around Dunedin. I've managed to find some recordings of that, so that'll be Bruce's band Pretty Trippy as well in the break. So let's go to part one. So I'm talking with Bruce here at the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery, and Bruce is also part of the Dunedin Strange Occurrences group. Now, Bruce, what possessed you to, we'll talk about the museum first, what possessed you to start this museum up? It's a great idea.
Well, I think everyone should have a museum in their house, really. It's just a matter of, like, sitting aside a room and putting some labels on things. And it's a great way to meet people and connect with people. Like, I had an old friend yesterday turn up, I hadn't seen for like 20 years. He probably wouldn't have found me if it hadn't been for the museum. And so it's a really good way to meet people. And part of the reason, you know, like, being a cynical bastard, I set it up, was I'm an artist and I wanted to have my own gallery and cut out the art dealers And so I thought I will combine a gallery with a museum, and I already had amassed a big collection of different things over the course of my life, like how I collect skulls. I have been for all my life, taxidermy, stuff relating to local history, world history, medical research, paranormal, and so I had this sort of collection, and it was sort of spread between my house and my studio and a lockup, and I always had this dream of one day getting it all out and having my own little museum. And so I was living in Wellington for a long time teaching art, and there was no way I could afford a building in the middle of town to open a museum in. So I started coming down here a lot in the sort of around 2015, 2016, when my parents were unfortunately dying, and I was the only child, so I was sort of looking after them. And I thought, I could live in Dunedin again. I was born here. I could move back to Dunedin. I could probably afford a house in the town. And I got a little bit of money off my mum, and I unfortunately had to split up with my partner in Wellington because she didn't want to move from Dunedin and live in a museum. But it was just a dream that I had, that I thought, okay, this is my second midlife crisis, and the dream is to open a museum. So here it is.
Cool. Everyone should have a museum in their house. I'll tell my wife that because I've got lots of stuff. I don't know how she'll go, but yeah, I've got lots of radio stuff and theatre stuff that I can put on display.
It's just a matter of putting labels and trying to write good labels, because you go to a lot of amateur museums, little folk museums around the place, and they might have a collection of 100 lawnmowers from the beginning of lawnmowers to whatever it is, whatever they're fascinated with. But oftentimes they don't explain. There's not enough information.
I agree
about why these things are interesting. So a lot of it is telling stories and connecting the objects to an individual.
I agree, Bruce. I've been to some of these little regional museums around New Zealand, and they are, they have cool collections. But like you say, there's a collection there of was in Middlemarch we were in one, I think, a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that's a great museum.
Yeah, but there was this one particular display had all this stuff in it.
Yeah.
But it didn't tell you whose it was or why it was there or anything. And it was like, well, I would really be interested in the history of whose this World War I stuff is.
A lot of these little museums, they've got, I know Middlemarch Museum, so they've got the submarine there. Possibly the first submarine ever developed, even. Well, definitely one of the first, because the first one was the Hunley and Confederate War. So not the first, but one of the first. Yep. And that was developed to try and mine gold from the bottom of rivers. So fascinating this has ended up in Middlemarch. But anyway, I wanted to avoid that pitfall, and so because I'm a sort of almost like a one-man band, although I do get help from my partner and other friends, and there is a committee that helps with the museum, that I wanted to put a lot of attention into finding objects that I could tell stories with.
Right. And that's as I say, that's the best way, the best museums, where you're telling the story. So as I said, I get so frustrated. You look at the display and you go, like you say, lawnmowers, really cool. And what it looks like is the locals have all just dumped all their old lawnmowers there, and there's nothing attached to it, and you don't know why. And while it's cool that they're preserving them, there is kind of like, well, I'd like to know the history of it,
Yeah, and a lot of it's finding those people, who invented the lawnmower, and what sort of salacious, what dirty things did, what's the dirt on the...
exactly. So the sort of, any like interesting, you got a lot of the bones and skulls and stuff here. Is there anything really weirdly interesting amongst them that's like real? You haven't made something up, like if you got a skeleton of something odd that you can't...
Look, come on, mate. Come on. So we're sitting in the gallery at the moment. I mean, you can't see it because we're just talking here on the radio, but we're sitting in the gallery of the museum, and the gallery is a room full of art that I make out of bones, predominantly. The rest of the house, the other sort of three main rooms in the hall are full of museum objects, and everything is exactly what it says it is. Sometimes I'm tempted to make up a provenance, but no, everything is exactly what it says it is, and there are things in here that will blow your freaking mind once you realise what it is you're looking at. And some things I've spent literally 20 years trying to acquire because I bought into the story long ago, and I wanted something that gave me a touchstone to that story.
So have you ever spent a lot of money on something just to get it for the museum, or have you always managed to get them cheaply?
I don't want to.
You don't have to tell me figures or anything, but you know,
I don't want to say.
Because I mean, collectors, you know, of odd things will often, you know, want to hold on to them or pay it.
Well, there's a community of people collecting skulls. There's a community of people collecting sort of ethnological art. Yeah, by which I mean I collect art from Papua New Guinea and Africa. There's a community of people collecting local history, you know, objects, you know. And so there are all these little communities, and I have friends in many of them, and you try not to step on each other's toes, and you try and wheel and deal in a friendly way, and when things come up at auction or trade me or whatever, there's sort of like etiquette around, you know, so you don't want to get in bidding wars with your friends. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about how much. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
But you talk about the trade me thing, just on a segue. Do you ever see anything that's overpriced on there? You just think ridiculous.
All the time.
I had an example the other weekend where, and this segues a little bit, it was a little 12-channel lighting board that was being advertised in Wellington, and I thought, sweet, I'm going to Wellington next weekend. I might. And they initially advertised it for $199, and I had a chat with some people that said, it's not worth more than $100, it's old, you know, don't worry about it. So I thought I'll just sit there and watch it. So no, it didn't sell. So then he made an offer of $150, and the guy, the local lighting guy, said, no, like high guy said, no, I wouldn't pay more than $100. So I go to Wellington, it gets relisted. The guy relisted it at $699. it's like you didn't sell it, and you're going to relist it at 3 to 6 times more than what you already had it listed at.
Some people make mistakes. I mean, this guy listed his sort of almost like, you know, quite a decent part of a fossil whale skeleton, and he put it up for something like $200, whereas he meant to put $20,000.
Oh, right.
So I bought it, knowing that he made a mistake. And then it was like, oh shit, well, I've made a mistake, and then he backtracked and managed to cancel a sale. But I sort of hit, I did it to poke.
Yeah. Well, this one was just ridiculous. Putting the price up, I thought that's just ridiculous. You haven't sold it at what you think it's worth, so you put it up. Well, and then in the description was, I've no way of testing to see if it works. Yeah. So there's the other thing is, why would you sell it for that much if you don't know if it works?
But also in my business of collecting like artifacts like skulls, you know, rare animals and historical items, there's a lot of ethics involved, and I don't want to see people selling fossil whale skeletons, trying to get 20 grand for them. And he said, like, if you give me more money, I'll tell you where I found it. You know, it's like, no, this is museum stuff. You should be talking to the museum. This is not something you sell on trade. No. Sorry.
And see, also, I have an issue with that too. Like, not just with skeletons, but things like that you kind of you find something. And you see it so often on TV, these shows that you see about, you know, collectors or these second-hand deals, or someone's got a collection and they go around, you know, the pickers going to pick, and, I found that in the garage, but I want $3,000 for it. Well, I'm sort of sitting there thinking, really? Like, $1 is a profit for you, you know? Why are you being such a greedy prick, you know? It's like,
human nature.
You found it for nothing.
It's human nature. Yeah, American pickers,
Yeah, well,
it's so sad that Frank's like a lot of people, I love Frank.
Yeah. But it just seems, really, these guys will say, oh, we found that in the garbage, but we want $3,000 for it.
You wouldn't believe what I've had people bring in here and say, you know, do you want to buy this? You know, can this be sold? And it's like, I'm sorry, this is worth huge amounts of money, but legally you cannot sell this. You know, and really it should be in a museum. And don't talk to me. You know, this should be in a major institution. But they, of course, they don't want to do that. They want to turn it into money. But it's just not possible because they're breaking the law.
Of course not. Yeah, maybe I'm just too much of a socialist, but I kind of look at things like that and think that's just greedy, you know.
Well, me too. I mean,
just greedy, you know.
I may look like I'm quite quite well heeled in here, but it's all the time. It's on the edge of falling over.
Yeah, fair enough. Talking to Bruce from the
Dunedin Museum
of
Natural Mystery.
Natural Mystery. We'll be back shortly. I'll talk about the Strange Occurrences Society.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
feel this unique feeling. Extinction, rebellion, extinction, rebellion, extinction, rebellion.
Dunedin band Pretty Trippy and Extinction Rebellion. My guest this week, Bruce Mahalaski, is up front of that band. Let's go back to the chat I did with Bruce in the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery.
The Dunedin Strange Occurrences Society. Tell me a little bit about how that got started, and then we're going to talk paranormal.
Okay, so I'm friends with a guy called James Gilbeard, who this is quite a funny story actually. So he's a photographer. Like, I know a lot of photographers. In fact, I trip over them when I walk down the street. Professional photographers, oh my god, I've tripped over another one. I've been in a band with like two of them. It's just like everyone I know seems to be a professional photographer. Anyway, James is a professional photographer, and he also has the only gallery in New Zealand dedicated to photography, which is Photospace Gallery in Wellington.
Cool.
So he's one of those people that sort of collects sort of like real estate, I guess. He's not rich at all. He's as poor as I am, but he likes renting places out and finding uses for them. And so he got this rental property in Wellington, and he had the spare room, and he thought, this room would be quite cool for a detective agency or something like that. And he was talking to another friend called Mark, who ran the art school where I worked, the Haunted Art School in Wellington, and Blocky Art School. And so they started talking about the idea of setting up like a paranormal detective agency.
Cool.
And then they thought, why don't we set up a paranormal research group? And it was sort of like a joke project in the beginning. And this was only like about 2014, something like that. So 10 years ago. So they set up the Strange Occrances Society.
Yep.
And this is around the same time that Paranormal New Zealand, Haunted New Zealand was sort of starting to sort of find its feet. Paranormal research has become very popular in recent years. So they set up Strange Occurrences, and it just took off.
Yep.
And they started getting all these offers of places to investigate, and then a book deal from Random House just dropped in his lap.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he wrote this book with a woman called, I think, Jo Miller, called Spooked, about sort of paranormal research, sort of history of, and sort of New Zealand sort of paranormal research, his own experiences. So it's a great book called Spooked on Random House. I don't know if it's still in print. So James is a good buddy, and I know I went on some of his expeditions and his things. He wouldn't actually let me join. So he wouldn't let me join because I was too tainted by the fact I worked at the art school. So a lot of the research, the art school was almost like a test case. So right. Like art school in Wellington, it's got this rep for being haunted. I have an artefact in this museum from the art school where I am maintaining that a poltergeist damaged this artefact. It's here in the museum if you want to come and look at it.
Yep.
I'm saying it happened. So on the whole, the time I was working there, which was 2005 to 2017, it was pretty quiet. Paranormal things like haunts, they tend to go up and down. I think a lot depends on a lot of factors, but places are active and then they become inactive, and then they may spring into activity again. So I'm always thinking, like, how active is this place? And a lot of places have got this history of activity, but they're not active now. So anyway, having this sort of relationship with James, he suggested when I moved down here, why don't you set up a Dunedin branch, like a chapter, we'll patch you in,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So I thought, I don't really want to do that until I've got a place that I can investigate. Because there was a couple of previous paranormal groups in Dunedin, but I looked at them and I talked to them, and they didn't really seem to do anything. And I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be a group that just
did nothing.
Yeah. So, and then we got access to the Tunnel Hotel in Port Chalmers, and a friend was living there, and he had a wardrobe full over, and at like 2 or 3 in the morning, And that's not something that's usual.
No.
And there was another person that lived in the building that we started talking to, and there was a lot of unexplained noises.
So like, let's talk about that tunnel hotel. I mean, do you actually think there's something in that, to that being haunted? I mean, there's a lot of places in Dunedin, and we'll talk about some of them soon, that people allege are haunted, that I've been to or that I've been part of.
Well,
Nothing happens.
Ditto.
But
yeah.
this hotel, you definitely think there's something, or there was something. So, and when we say paranormal, we're not suggesting it's a ghost, people. It could be anything, some sort of unusual activity. You know, wasn't it 3 o'clock in the morning? I used to work in the port. I know there's no trains through at that time of the morning, so it's not a train knocking the wardrobe over, right? So you think there was definitely something, or there is definitely something?
Well, it
to
would
that
take a
building?
very big train to knock
Yeah,
a
yeah,
wardrobe.
yeah,
Wardrobes
yeah,
just don't fly over by themselves.
Yeah. And you talk about unusual noises. What sort of noises were unusual, you know?
Well, just unexplained loud noises. And when you're in an old building, you know, often you need to spend a while there to work out. You know,
Yep.
the building settles,
Yep.
you know, and expands, and so just unexplained noises. I personally didn't have anything happen to me when I was there, and I spent a number of sessions there by myself on the top floor to the right of the building, where a former publican lived, and this is he's supposed to be, you know, the guy that haunts the building. And I've got quite a lot of I've had quite a lot of correspondence from people who've lived there, telling me that everyone agrees that this is, and I certainly have been in houses that have got a reputation as an active haunt, and often it's noises, unexplained noises. But at the same time, you're in an old building, so it's really hard to separate out the natural from the unnatural.
Exactly.
And I'm a hard-nosed scientific rationalist. So what I'm looking for in this whole game is I want to see something move without any apparent agent moving it, or I want to see something that I can't explain. And friends of mine have been lucky enough to have this happen. But personally, I've been waiting all my life.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I'm with you. It's kind of noises are, you know, as you say, old buildings make noise all the time, right? You know, and it's very easy for someone to say, "Oh, look, there's a tap." Or I watch a few of these teams on YouTube from the UK, and they're in even older buildings, and there'll be a noise, and I often think, is it a bloody rodent? Or the building, you know, you can't discount that it's that.
Yes.
To me, noises are all very well, but, you know, I look at it, and this is just me, Bruce, whether you agree or not, I look and I think, now, what is a haunting? Is it just a energy pattern repeating itself, or is it, you know, and I'm a fan of Star Trek, and I got this thing at home that says everything I learned in life I learned from Star Trek, right? now, there's several episodes of them where there's been universes crossing in parallel. Now, is a haunting simply somebody sitting in the same space at the same time, but in a different universe or a different dimension, and we're not seeing them, and they're not seeing us, but they can hear or see, you know what I mean? Things crossing, or what is it? Or is it when you die? Say you die and you haunt a house, and you died in the 1980s. Are you in that space, but you see that space as the 1980s? You know?
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's. I mean, we can go into huge depth here.
Yeah.
And I am looking for a mechanistic, you know, a mechanistic reason, explanation for these things, and I think the fact that dead people doing it, I think, is very much egocentric. It's very much around humans and the idea of God and that our soul, our lives continue in the afterlife. I think there's multiple explanations. You know, it could be a whole other a creature. You know, it could be who knows what it is. That's the mystery. That's why it's interesting.
Yep.
But there's man, we go so deep here so quick that where do I even start? So Michael Persinger, he's a guy I always come back to. He's like a Canadian neuroscientist,
Right.
And he's done a lot of work manipulating high-powered magnets around people's heads,
Right.
and like a helmet.
Yeah.
And when you're in contact with powerful electrical or magnetic fields, it has an effect on the brain,
Right.
and you can start to have very, very vivid hallucinations. And this is a fact. And so a lot of old buildings, and this is true with the art school I worked, they're not properly earthed. There's been fires there, electrical fires. electricity leaking around all over the place. So I firmly believe that we live in a multiplicity of dimensions. Like you and me, we're living in different dimensions. I've got no idea what's going in on your head and mine. So there's a million different dimensions out there, and sometimes perhaps dimensions cross.
That's what I was trying to say. So we're standing. Say for example, we were on a paranormal hunt right now, and we're in a building, and that's what I'm saying. We see or we hear something. It's actually another dimension. Or another universe at the same time, but we don't quite see each other or hear.
It's like waveforms. So I'm looking for this quantum physics, sort of thing. This mechanistic explanation for these things. I'm not looking for the ghost of grandma or something like that. And I do think electrical fields, magnetic fields, are part of the answer, but we don't know. So it might be that these powerful electrical fields. We're electrical animals. We're affected by the electrical environment around us. That these electrical fields are causing us to hallucinate, or perhaps there is an agent out there, an intelligent agent, who can use this electrical energy to manifest itself and interact with us, or perhaps it's somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, and what you talk about electrics, I've just finished a decade at the Globe Theatre. I've left there now, but theatres. People always say theatres are haunted, right?
Yeah.
And again, electrical fields. I know for a fact that the Globe, like the electrics in there, some of it is very old. Like you say, the earthing is dodgy, and that is that. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, and I've said this on the show before, but I'll say it again now for Bruce's benefit. In all the years I was there, I heard noises. Again, probably an old building, right? I used to walk into the place and say, "Good morning, Frank," just because, hey, if the ghost is here or whatever. Now, 2 occasions could I say I saw something, but I'll tell you the story and then I'll tell you what I think happened, right? So doing the show one day, the seat on the very end of the front row, no one sitting in it during the show, doing my end of show, shut down while they're cleaning up, there's an old chap sitting there. Okay, that's weird, there's an old chap sitting there, but nothing unusual, because people would often sit there, wait for cars. My wife was the front of house manager. She was coming up, cleaning out the rubbish under the seats with someone else. I look back, because I'm thinking, hell, I can't turn the worker lights on. To that guy's, I look back, he's gone. I say, okay, well, so he's just gone. So I said to her in the car on the way home, gee, that old guy in the front seat was a pain in the ass, wasn't he? What old guy? Oh, we didn't sell that seat, there was no one there. I said, well, he was sitting there at the end of the show. So the next day we come into the theatre, and there's a self-portrait of Frank, the previous caretaker, on the wall. Now, again, I only saw the guy from behind, but if you look at the picture of him, and I thought, it could be Frank sitting there in a hat. But what I'll say is, I'm more than sure it was just somebody sitting there waiting for, for somebody else, and he just happened to leave while I wasn't looking.
This is how stories start.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's the most normal story out of that place. I've had other stories of people saying, oh, this happened and that happened, and like, for example, I left the place, and then about 4 or 5 weeks after that, a recent arrival in the place who'd heard all the ghost stories tried to tell me that they were sitting in the auditorium. So we had all the worker lights were on, they'd finished rehearsal, and they were sitting in the auditorium talking to someone who had their back to the stage, and Frank appeared to them in full body on the stage, and the first thing I said was,
started tap dancing.
Well, the first thing I said was, so in all the years that place has been there, and all the years that things have happened, right? You've been there 2 months, and you're the one that he's chosen to show himself to? I said, I spent many years in there working all on my. I said, really?
Yeah, but if you talk to mediums, you're not, you're not on the astral plane. You're not sensitive.
No.
But having said that, I talked to a person the other day who was in a play there some time ago, like before all this paranormal malarkey, and she said she was in the changing room on the top floor. That room, I think, was all hats and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When a hand reached out from all the props.
Yeah.
And unexpectedly, and just freaked her, made her scream when she ran out.
But did she really see a hand, or was she? in the thing of this place is haunted. I think I've seen the hand.
Exactly,
And I mean, a lot of women have said to me, "Oh," and you were with us on the ghost hunt that night. In the particular room where women have said, "Oh, we've been up here and we feel uncomfortable." And my wife even said, "Oh, the door got shut up there and it was like it was being held shut, and it took a while to get it open." Now I don't know. Old doors in the place. Maybe they just happen to jam, whatever. But it seems to be females that have freaked out by it. I don't know, but that's the sort of thing where.
I will say that I do think women are more sensitive.
Yeah,
than men
I was just going to say to you about that. I've done a show with Amy from Paranormal New Zealand where we talked about that, where I think women are more sensitive to things. But in relation to that venue, I'm not sure that. I mean, put it this way: if there was going to be a ghost haunting the place, and if we say ghosts exist, then it is likely to be the former caretaker who's looking after the place, right? I don't know that, but curiously. I used to walk in there thinking, oh yeah, there's someone here looking after the place, right? But the night I left, the energy in the place felt different. It felt like he'd moved on, he'd finished. And then whether that was me thinking, I've finished, but that's by the by, I don't know. Let's talk about some other places in Dunedin now. You see, now people talk about this Larnax Castle. I don't know if you've ever been there. I've been there a couple of times. And all this rubbish you've seen on TV about apparitions, and you've heard this and you've heard that. And frankly, I've been there, and it's dead. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
We're looking at doing an investigation and
Yeah.
try and get permission.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't believe it's haunted.
No.
I know Sophie doesn't think it's haunted.
Yeah.
Who used to.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's haunted for a moment.
Yeah.
But we'll investigate the place because it's one of those places on the paranormal.
Well, and that's the thing. I've seen TV shows on. I think there was that silly New Zealand show they did where the woman screamed all the time.
Ghost Hunter.
Terrible, something I know. And then I think there was the Ghost Hunters International did it, and the biggest thing they had was there's some cutlery clanking over in the corner there, and my first thought was old building, rodent. Maybe there's a rodent run over the things that's clunk, clunk, clunk. But that was their compelling evidence,
Yeah, that Ghost Hunt show. I've got the book.
Yeah.
So there are these two TV friendly. This hot young chickens.
And all she did was scream all the time.
Wandering around by themselves. And then this dude out in the van, and at the end of it, he would Photoshop their stuff. Like he would manipulate the freaking hell out of it to make sure they got something.
I know. It's very intriguing. Like you see a lot of those shows where they claim to have captured something, yet then you go.
They were there for one night.
Yeah, I know. And then you go onto YouTube where you've got the more sort of real teams like Paranormal New Zealand, Ouija Brothers, all these guys in the UK, and they go to things and there's nothing, and they get nothing, and you think, why?
I'm going to do a plug here for my favourite YouTube ghost hunting team, and 99% of paranormal stuff on TV is absolute freaking bullets, and I can tell you as someone who does this, it's bullets. You go to a place. One night, nothing's going to happen. You've got to go there all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the best people, I'm going to say, this is my plug for Ghost Theory.
Ghost Theory, yep.
So Joe and Elliot, so I've chatted with them a little bit. Yeah, Joe and Elliot, I think, are doing the best work out there. They're two very smart guys. They're getting better all the time. 99% of the time, nothing happens.
They got a bit of personality about them too. That's what I quite like.
They've got a sense of humour.
Yeah, exactly. I watched them, I watched the Ouija Brothers, and I watched Ghosts on Trent. And I think those other two teams are okay, but they're a bit more serious. Whereas Joe and Elliot, just a bit of a laugh.
Smart buggers.
Yeah, a bit of a laugh.
They're great.
But the thing that intrigues me about some of those places those UK teams go to are some of those houses that are just left. I just can't believe that.
I'm so jealous.
But who would just leave a house with everything in it?
Literally selling hundreds of thousands of pounds of antiques.
I know. And photos and family documents, and you just think, it's, in a way, taking away the paranormal part of it. That's sad.
I know. Well, that's why they're worth watching for themselves.
Exactly.
The places they go to are fascinating in themselves. And then you've got their personalities. It's compelling.
I know.
Whether they find something or not.
I know. It's bizarre. The only one of all the other teams that really sort of was compelling for me was Ghosts on Trent went to this old church. I can't think where it was. It was a chapel in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, I remember that one.
With the broomstick.
Yes.
Now that was, to me, I thought, well, that's interesting because that broomstick didn't just fall over. It was slammed.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm going to do another plug,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
Laney and Ben.
Yeah.
So they have really commercialised,
Yeah.
their
Yeah,
haunt,
yeah.
and I'm not going to name any other channels,
no.
but they have captured some very compelling evidence. Where you've got multiple things happening at once. You've got objects levitating. This is from static cameras that are on all the time. Very hard to debunk.
The thing that does amaze me, though, as you say, you said earlier about paranormal activity just happening and then not, especially with these UK teams, the 3 or 4 teams I watch will all go to the same place. Some of them will get corroborating evidence. The others will turn up, nothing.
Yeah,
It's bizarre.
But what's happened now in the last 5 years? It's 5 years ago. It was a hobby, and for me, it's a hobby. It's a bit of fun, Whereas it's become business now.
Yeah.
Laney being a typical example of that. Whereas here's a way we can make a living, and we can make quite a decent living becoming, internet, YouTube famous, whatever. And then it becomes, well, we need to keep this thing going.
Exactly. Whereas it's intriguing that some teams can go to multiple places and nothing, or the whole thing is bizarre. It just as we say, if it's an interdimensional thing or a parallel universe thing, maybe it's timing. You have to be in the place at the right time when the two universes connect or dimensions connect, because as I say, so often you'll see something, someone will hear something, see something, and then you'll turn up the next night with your team, nothing.
Well, I relate it to fishing.
Yeah.
That you can go to a lake and there's fish in the lake, and you can cast a line into the lake all day and you won't catch anything.
No.
But it doesn't mean there's no fish in the lake.
No, exactly. But the whole thing is it's very, very interesting. Just how what is it? That's why it's
so fascinating.
That's right. That's the big thing for me. We'll be right back with Bruce on more of this on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
Josephine. Oh. Puts it in, he pulls it out, he puts it in, and he goes out in the street, beating his feet down an alley, and I'm upset. He knocks on a door, but there's nobody there. Oh, Josephine. He's still a down and dirty fiend. Josephine. We all know Joe. We all know Joe. Hey, whoa. Doesn't know. The doctors, they lying through his teeth. Get screwed, yeah. I give him no relief. control goes losing it now. Out of control goes lost it now. Out of control goes losing it now. Out of control goes lost it now. Out of control goes losing it now. Out of control goes losing it now. Out of control he's losing it now. Out of control goes lost it now. Out of control he's losing it now. Out of control goes lost it now. Robin Murphy, there he is.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
Yes, it's me, the Roadie. I have questions. Hope you're enjoying the live and the raw chat with Bruce Mahalaski from the Dunedin Strange Occurrences Society and the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery. That was his band Pretty Trippy with a song called Joe's a Fiend. Let's get back to the chat, which was recorded in the Museum of Natural Mystery here in Dunedin.
And I'm back with Bruce now. Now, before the break, we were talking about what is it and stuff. The thing that bugs me out of all these paranormal things, the TV shows, the real shows, whatever, is these people that call themselves mediums, right? I get really pissed off when I see in one of the ghost teams I won't mention now that I watch, in their early things they had this woman that was a medium with them, and she'd walk around the place looking stunned and saying this. Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, I don't buy this crap, because if I'm standing in the room with someone who's telling me a medium, I can hear this, I can hear that. Well, what makes you so special? How come you can see and you can, and then they're sitting there saying, well, I think it's this, I think it's that. Well, hang on. Are you in contact with these spirits or people or not? Because how can you make a vague... Surely if someone is talking to you in their head, they're going to say, my name is Bruce, I died in 1932, but they're sitting there going, oh, I think it's a man, and blah, blah. I mean, come on.
Well, first of all, having done a psychology degree, it's very easy to debunk all that malarkey.
Yeah.
Two is I've never met a small medium or even a medium. They all seem to be large. I would love to meet a medium who was more intelligent than me. So far, I'm afraid I haven't met one. Most mediums are women. No disrespect to women. I have met some male mediums. But none of them have impressed me. And I do have to say, what's that famous, the first English show that got going with Carl and... What's that show?
Most Haunted or
Most
something.
Haunted, Most Haunted. So they relied on mediums in the beginning, and they had that famous
guy.
twerp, but after a while, it was good that they dropped their medium. So I think any serious paranormal researcher that I know has very little respect, if not none.
That's what I mean.
The idea of mediumship.
I just don't get how you can take it seriously. Like, to me, it's not compelling enough evidence, if you get what I mean. Like, somebody sitting there saying, I'm hearing this in my head, I'm feeling this. That's great, right? But the rest of the people in the room aren't feeling it. So, how do I believe you, you know?
So I'll tell you now, so my father, so I've got some things in the museum related to him. So my father got interested in paranormal research. So paranormal research is sort of as a sort of pseudoscience really sort of took off after World War One. When a lot of people had died, and people like Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes books, got fascinated with the idea of life after death, and a lot of people wanted explanations. And the whole thing of mediumship and table tipping, it became very, very popular. And there's a guy called Harry Price, who was like the first guy to sort of like pretend to put it on a scientific footing. Now we know he was a total charlatan who's been completely debunked. But he'd wrote a lot of books. My father got fascinated with these books as a young medical student and started writing to him. And I've got some of Harry Price's letters here. What's my point? Harry Price, mediums. Sorry, I've lost my point.
That's all right. It's all right.
Lost my thread.
That's all right.
But anyway, in this museum, there are quite a few artefacts relating to Price. Also, my relationship with the Haunted Art School in Wellington. There's some photographs that have been taken by friends. One of which is very compelling, of seemingly a ghost in a window in England.
Right.
And I've also got pieces of stone from some of the most haunted buildings in England. And my favourite pieces of stone are from the roof of a house on the Isle of Man, at a place called Cashin's Gap, which is supposedly haunted by a talking mongoose called Jeff.
Yeah, I did an episode with Mark on that. That was an interesting story.
Yeah, so I'm obsessed with the talking. So I actually did a tribute mural to as a hidden Jeff painted in Dunedin. I won't say where it is, but as a tribute mural to Jeff.
That whole story fascinates me, man. I'm like, a talking mongoose, really?
Yeah. So I've got, my father had the first edition of the book,
The
Haunting of Cashin's Gap by Harry Price and R.S. Lambert.
Yeah.
And I read it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he had all these other paranormal books by Price. And I sort of took it on board. It was all mixed up with these science books. It's, hey, this is sort of like real.
So let's get your opinion on that. What do you think? Do you think it was actually a talking mongoose? Because as I said to Mark when I discussed on the show with him, we've never heard of a talking mongoose before that. We've never heard of a talking mongoose after that. Why would that mongoose in that particular place at that particular time be talking?
Okay, well, there was a movie that's just come out.
I haven't seen it yet.
Something like something Nandor Photo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
There was another guy that investigated the case.
Yeah, I must watch that.
Strange Case of Nandor Photo or something like that. And it was very disappointing. Very disappointing. So what do I think happened there? So it was a guy who was like a businessman who decided to get out of business, and he was like probably late 50s, early 60s, and buy a farm in the middle of nowhere in the Isle of Man, and took his wife and teenage daughter, and started living in the middle of nowhere, and then this sort of talking mongoose turns up called Jeff, and starts, basically sort of manifesting itself in the house, and so he wrote to the sort of Psychical Research Society in England, what are they called, the big one, saying he's got this talking mongoose and would they like to come and have a look at it. So a bunch of them went out there, and of course they never saw it, but some of them did hear it, and it threw things. It seemed to be have some of the characteristics of a poltergeist. A lot of people think it was the daughter voyeury, doing a bit of ventriloquism. I think it's a fascinating case. And I believe, obviously, that the family were behind it. I believe the daughter was the focus of it. I think there may have been some interesting elements there that I can't explain. But I think it's a very fair... And there's even a New Zealand element in it that the mongoose could... It seemed to be genius. It seemed to know a lot of stuff. Exactly. It seemed to know a lot of stuff that the father knew.
Exactly.
And so it could imitate a moorpork even.
Oh, okay.
Although in the book it's misspelled moorpark.
Oh, okay.
But he was an interesting character, Jeff.
I'm kind of with you. I kind of think it was the family. I mean, you've got to think of the time. It's 1930s. There's not...
But the daughter,
you're in the middle of nowhere.
I think she might even be still alive. She stood by it.
Yeah, I know she stood by it.
To her death.
But see, I just don't buy it, because why would it only be? Why have we only ever heard of one mongoose at that one point in time?
But it's only been one Jesus Christ.
Well. So we think. So if you believe in Jesus Christ,
of course, there's been those other prophets.
I know.
So maybe Jeff was a prophet.
Yeah, I know. But then he just disappears. Oddly, just disappears.
Well, a farmer did shoot something that looked like a mongoose, but
they claimed that wasn't Jeff.
You've said it wasn't Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's just that whole story is really fascinating.
Yeah, it blows my mind.
It does. I just think they're in an isolated place, in the middle of nowhere, 1930s.
Yeah.
As you say, that sort of psychological research was kind of new,
becoming popular.
Yeah, and it was probably an easy time. I'm not saying people were more gullible back then, but you were easily
they were.
Fooled. Easily fooled.
Conan Doyle,
exactly.
He got fooled by the Cottingley fairies thing.
Yeah,
A couple of teenage girls taking some fake photographs of fairies. And he bought it.
That's right. So, I don't know. Certainly an interesting story, that one. But talking about psychics, as we were, I kind of think the one thing that I do think is intuitives. People often get feelings about things, and I think that's more of a legitimate thing to me. Someone can sometimes walk into a place and go, "Oh, I feel like there's bad energy here, or there's good energy, or I feel danger, or whatever." Because in my life, I've had things happen like that.
I get that too.
Yeah, I believe that can happen, right? Yeah. But the psychic part where I'm talking to the spirit of Bruce and he's saying A, B, Z, bullshit.
Yeah.
I just think that's I don't know. In fact, the most interesting part of that I ever saw was Darren Brown. You've no doubt seen Darren
I'm
Brown.
a huge fan
Yeah,
of Darren Brown. He is brilliant.
So you
Very
would have
clever.
seen it was a few years ago now, the Spiritualist Church of America episode, where he completely fooled them and had the head of the church claiming that it was the most
I've got
psychic person he'd ever seen.
He should actually be more well known.
Oh yeah.
I got a lot of respect for that man.
He just showed how it was done, and to me, you know, anyone listening to the show, if you believe you're a psychic, and maybe you do believe, and that's fine, but to me, if you're doing a paranormal research, and I'm not going to buy somebody standing on a video in a room telling me that I can see a girl in the corner and the two other guys that are standing there with you can't see or hear anything, right? I'm a little bit like Bruce here. I want to see something or hear something that's legit, right? That you can physically put down as that is paranormal. And again, I'm not saying it's a ghost, because paranormal is just something out of the normal. It might be an alien for all we know, or whatever. But I want to see it or hear it. I don't just want to have someone go, I'm feeling there's a little girl sitting in the corner and she's bollocks, right?
But as a paranormal researcher, you know, I think all this evidence from teams like, you know, Ouija Brothers, etc. It's all very interesting. But I'm not going to believe it until I see it for myself. I'm out there, you know, visiting supposedly haunted places, looking for that personal experience, and to me, documenting it, you know, so we don't put up like a lot of stuff, videos and stuff, because I'm not really that interested. We don't take a lot of gear. We've got gear. We do take some gear, but it's really just about sitting there in the dark and hoping like hell something happens.
Yeah, and the thing is, and that's the thing that gets me though, as you say about those teams, compared, the credit I'll give those teams on YouTube compared to the television ones, the made-for-TV ones, right? The made-for-TV ones always see something. Whereas these guys are in, like you say, ghost theory. They've never captured anything on, there's never been an apparition or anything. Well, so how come these guys on TV can sit there and get an apparition, but when these other teams go to the same places where these apparitions have been, they see nothing? I just don't buy that, you know. It's kind of I don't know. And see, the other intriguing thing too was you're talking about earlier on. This just came to mind because I think it was a ghost theory. It was either ghost theory or Ouija Brothers, but you're talking about the electrical current thing. One of the teams was in a house that was full of mold, and they were breathing spores into. And it came out in the discussion that, in fact, the spores can sometimes make you hallucinate as well. Yes. And how often do these teams go into houses with this sort of stuff in and think they're hearing and seeing things?
I'm often really quite shocked to see them walking around in some of these places without wearing filters.
Yeah. It's quite... So, I mean, that could be an influence on things as well.
No doubt.
And are these psychic people picking up on things like that as well? I don't know.
I believe that humans have an instinctive
intuition.
A need to believe in that this life isn't everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would like to believe in life after death.
Yeah.
And hence, you know, these religious structures that were built.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe in life after death. I think it'd be nice, but I'm not sold on the idea at all.
Yeah, well, prove it, you know.
I'm out there. Just as Joe Public, and it's a bit of fun, bit of a hobby. Just trying to have an interesting experience. I'm not looking for the holy grail.
No, see, what you just did there hits nail on the head. Now, the life after death thing, right? Why is it? And this is segueing into something else. I'm going to segue into it in a minute. But you know, there's people like Harry Price, like Art Bell, the paranormal radio host, have all passed away, right? And yet these so-called psychics and that have always claimed to be making contact with people, and they're always famous people. It's not some Saxon peasant or a friggin' Roman slave, right? It's Henry VIII or whatever. Now, if there is life on the other side, why aren't people like Art Bell and Harry Price saying, right, because I was looking for proof all my life, now I'm dead, I'm going to make contact to prove that.
Well, some people like Oliver Lodge, you know, who's a famous paranormal researcher around the same time, have left codes behind. And
nothing's happened. No, exactly. So
and Houdini did as well.
Exactly. I was just going to say Houdini as well. Now, the thing that gets me is, I know, having listened to a lot of Art Bell's radio shows, that if there was a way for him to communicate back he would communicate back because so why is it that when because I was watching a thing last night on these ITC things that these people like bloody, what's his name, Steve Huff and that claimed to talk, and it was Beardo had a video saying, why is it that all the people he talks to are like Tina Turner, Elvis Presley, blah, blah, why isn't he just talking to some Saxon peasant? Why is it only famous people that talk to you? You know?
So just coming back to what I was thinking about before if you are listening to the show, I would recommend you look up Jeff for Talking Mongoose. It's a great story. And I would recommend, you check out Harry Price and Ghost Theory. What were we just talking about there?
The ITC stuff about Steve Huff and stuff, how he only speaks to famous people, he's never a peasant or anything, That's my argument. Surely, if there's communication coming from the other side, it's not just famous people that are allowed to talk, Why can't it be a peasant or a...
That's right. After a Ghost Theory episode the other day, a lot of these expeditions, people hear growling noises. And this is a very common phenomenon. I've never heard a growl myself. I'd love to. I'd probably wet myself, but I'd love to hear one. So ghosts often seem to growl, and they're never there when you want them. They're often annoying in that respect. So they often seem to be very low-level intelligence. These supposed intelligences. So I'm thinking, this is my latest theory, that ghosts and poltergeists are actually the spirits of dogs, or maybe the odd cat.
Well, why not? Why not? I mean,
a lot of people do see ghosts, and dogs are very sensitive to ghosts.
Well, it's funny you should say that because we never saw this, but this was interesting. Before we moved from Christchurch in 2011, we had a dog, and I think he passed away 2009 or something. Right? He's a Cocker Spaniel, and his favourite thing was coming to the door and dropping a tennis ball. And we'd play with him and throw it back, and we had to put him down. And a couple of days after he died, his tennis ball, which we'd put on top of his grave in the backyard, my wife got up the next morning, it was at the door. And then she put it back, and a couple of days later, it was at the door. Now, our kids were only little, so they wouldn't have, done it. So, our interesting thing, and for a while, we often, out the corner of our eye, thought we saw Eddie walking around, and then it just stopped. So, whether or not it was him or not.
Case closed. Ghosts, poltergeist people are the spirits of dogs.
Well, why not? I mean, it could have been, but then it just stopped. So whether or not he was just saying, "Hey, I'm okay" or whatever. But the growling thing. That's these people talk about growls, and I often sit there and think, if let's just hypothesize that ghosts exist. If I'm haunting your house as a person, why am I going to growl at you? Why am I going to growl? Why would I growl?
Well, another theory is that ghosts, etc., are. And this comes down to poltergeists as well. They're not whole personalities.
No.
They're like bits of broken code out there in the ether, literally like a virus, like a broken bit of code that every now and again it finds a bit of energy, that can glom onto, and if things are quiet, nothing's happening, people might notice it. But paranormal events could be happening all the time. But because there's so much noise and distraction, we don't notice them.
That's right. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
motion picture. So we fuck the universe. We raped nature. We turn the whole thing into a lucrative motion picture. Oh, you see, say hello for me. So fuck the universe, the next one as well. The horse that rode in can get fucked as well. Fuck God and fuck the devil. We just don't believe in your concept of people. Fuck God and fuck the devil. We just don't believe in your concept of people. You see, F-U-C-K. Tell her the song is over.
Pretty trippy with my guest Bruce Mahalaski up front there. Back to the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery and my Live in the Raw chat with Bruce here on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
So before the break, we were talking about what it is, bits of broken code and whatever, and is it happening all the time? Now, here's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, and this is the thing that I've debated with Sam from Paranormal New Zealand and Mark on great length that I don't buy. Okay. See, I'm a radio guy, right? I've got a ham radio. I've got my own radio station. I know how radio works, and the thing that pisses me off with these teams, you see, all of them, the TV ones, the YouTube ones, they get a radio, and they go, I'm going to put this in reverse scan, and because it's in reverse scan, it's going to pick up voices right. Well, see, the thing is, and I said this to Sam, when I was a young fella, I had a shortwave radio. It's how kids before the internet. That's how you learned about the world. You listen to shortwave radio, right? Yep. And I used to put it on scan. And guess what? I could put it on reverse scan, and it used to go through the stations. Yeah. Now, don't tell me that you're scanning a radio band. I even had one the other day. Said, "Oh, we've detuned it, and I think you can't detune a radio. Or we've pulled the aerial out. It doesn't matter. A radio will still work if it's a strong signal without an aerial." I don't buy, and I don't know what you think, but I don't buy these FM radios being scanned backwards or forwards saying, oh, look, I'm picking up a ghost. Because to me, right, one, some of these teams I've seen it do are in the UK, okay? So they're in an old building. Now, if we say a ghost is a spirit of a person, right, and it's a 16th century person, say, they don't even know what a friggin' radio is, right? How are they going to make a radio do anything, right? That's the start. And two, you talked about how there's could be paranormal stuff around all the time. There's radio signals all around us all the time, right?
Yeah. So I don't have a bar of that.
No,
it's way too complicated and baroque. Yeah. But I do have some belief in EVPs, electrical voice phenomena.
Which is what I wanted to talk about. Let's go.
Yeah. So some of the groups, such as Ghost Theory, etc., and other groups that I'm interested in, have caught some what I believe are interesting, perhaps examples of electrical voice phenomena where you're just running often an analog tape machine in a room, and it picks up what is clearly a human voice. Yeah, there's no doubt that it is a human voice, but it's a whole other jump to say that voice came from a dead person or someone else who's present now. Who knows where it came from? But there is a voice.
See, to me, there's two ways of thinking for me, and you tell me if you think you agree or not. One is that because we talk about energy, right? Perhaps the voice is just, okay, talk in terms of radio. If I talk on my radio station tonight, that goes out into space and it goes out forever and whatever. Perhaps it's just spurious energy of somebody who's existed, or it's a radio signal that's been around for a long time. That's right. That just happens to be on a loop. For some reason it's on a loop, and it just occasionally at a certain time, right, loops through. Or we want to talk about the different dimension, different universe thing. At a particular point when things come together, you're hearing something, but it's only at that time, because often people will go in at a different time, they don't get an EVP, but at other times they do. So,
well, this brings us to the sort of stone tape. So I was talking about the bits of stone from haunted buildings. So there's an idea called the stone tape theory, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, the idea that physical buildings, etc., stone, wood, can somehow record sort of psychic impressions.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting case, particularly for windows, that people often see ghosts in windows. Yeah. And the idea that a piece of glass can become coated through rainfall, etc., in a film, and there's a flash of lightning, and perhaps there was a person standing there when there was that flash of lightning. Yeah. And perhaps there is actually some kind
like a camera kind of thing,
exactly,
and recorded the image.
Yeah. So perhaps there are some times when these, actual real impressions are recorded in a way we don't yet understand, that are actually, mechanistically real.
So I was going to ask you about EVPs. I mean, to me, often you hear some of them on these things where Christ, that's just a burst of static, and you can make out anything you like. But have you ever heard any that are like clear enough where definitely it's something?
Not any of the people I know have recorded.
No.
But people I trust, I do think there are some times where they're very, very clear voices.
And so, what's your opinion? Do you think I'm kind of going down the right road, or that it's just a recorded kind of?
It's a mystery, isn't it? It's a mystery.
Because see, the thing that gets me about a lot of this ghost communication, if you like, where I'm asking you a question, you come. Again, I'm putting myself, and again, who knows if there is another side? Who knows, right? But what I'm thinking of, if I'm sitting there, I'm here now in this dimension, and someone's in a ghost talking to me, why am I only talking in one word? If you say to me, "What's your name?" Where you live, I'm going to go, my name is Bruce, I'm not just going to go John.
The theory is it takes them a lot of energy to
that's the theory.
To manifest
themselves. That's the theory, right?
Yes.
I mean, who knows? I just think, wouldn't they talk in sentences, rather than one word? And the other thing that gets me, and I actually brought this up with, I think it was the ghost theory guys on a chat a few weeks ago, especially in places like Britain where there's a lot more history, right? They're going to these old places and Tudor places, all that, and you're talking, or you're calling out to a spirit. You have to remember that's again, if you buy into the theory that spirits are ghosts of people that lived in the past, right? You're in a place that someone says, "Oh, this person from Tudor times haunted it." You have to remember that English in Tudor times was a lot different to what we're talking now. If they're talking back to you, one, are you going to understand totally what they say? Read Shakespeare, for example. A lot of people, that's Tudor English. A lot of people are like, whoa, right? Two, are they going to understand you in modern English? I mean, it's kind of, there's that as well,
I tend to think they would. I mean, obviously, Shakespeare's plays are written, for intelligent people, and we don't really know what the vernacular was like.
No, but you have to. But often people don't figure that in, that the language would be different back in the day.
Yes.
I've got this EVP from the 16th century. Well,
if you have enough energy to move a table, you would have enough energy to construct a sentence.
Yeah, but perhaps in a sentence, that's exactly right, and in a sentence in the language that you spoken probably, rather than in modern English, is what I'm trying to say, or
Well, this is most ridiculous when you get ghost hunters going to foreign countries and try and talk in English to foreign ghosts.
I know. That's the thing that gets me is, you'll often see that. They'll say, "Oh, we've got this compelling..." Really? You're in Germany. Why would a German ghost, if, again, buying into the theory that ghosts are spirits of people, why would he talk to you in English?
That's why Houdini fell out with Arthur Conan Doyle.
Right.
If you remember, that Conan Doyle, bought completely into them. He was extremely credulous. Even though he wrote these books about the scientific rationalists, it's just so bizarre. Anyway, so his wife purported to be a medium, and purported to get a message from Houdini's mother. So Houdini had always, one of his great dreams was to be able to communicate with his mother, who he loved dearly. So Conan Doyle's wife, Conan Doyle and Houdini became good friends, and so there was a moment when they were staying in a hotel somewhere I think it was in Atlanta or somewhere like that, and Conan Doyle's wife, I can't remember her name, purported to receive this written communication from Houdini's mother. But Houdini was extremely disappointed. His mother, it would have been in Yiddish. And she would have known his pet name and everything else, and it destroyed their friendship.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the other thing that I'm intrigued about too. You see, now if you buy into it that it's spirits of people, how do you actually know? Like, a spirit might come through and say, "I'm John." But how do you know it's not Bruce pretending to be John?
Or a demon.
Yeah, well,
demon,
if you buy in the demon, see, to me, and I'm going to piss some people off here, but this is what I believe, right? Demons and Satan and all that crap are a product of religion. Yes. Now, hear me out here, Bruce. Hear me out. And hear me out here on people, right? Look, why is it that when you have an exorcism, it can only be a Catholic priest that can do it? Because the Catholic Church created Satan and the demons, right? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm not having a bar of demons.
No, that's what I'm saying. No. So to me, it could be a spirit, but how do you know it's really the spirit of who you're talking to? You know, there
was an idea called the cosmic prankster. There do seem to be these inexplicable things that happen, like talking mongooses or falling fish. You know, so perhaps there is this agent out there who just likes fucking with us, frankly, just for its own amusement.
Yeah, exactly. And when I actually, I've actually thought about it myself, and I thought, now if I came back and I haunted one of the theatres that I worked in, right? And there was ghost teams in there, I'd play with them. I'd play with them. I wouldn't be serious. Yeah. I'd be, I'm going to play with you. I'm going to make noises and tell you shit that's not true. And why wouldn't I? Because that's the way I am, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, if you're intelligent, you wouldn't be screwing around here. You'd be off doing bigger and better things. That's why I think a lot of paranormal, are low-level intelligences or fragments of intelligence. I think anything that's really smart has gone off to do more interesting things.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. See, the other thing that I'm always intrigued with too, and a lot of ghost teams that you see never ask this, right? We're on a hunt and we're in a room and we're calling out, right? The thing that intrigues me is that we hear and we supposedly hear or we see them, right? My big question is, and I always have questions, is if, and this is all based on if it exists, the way the theory is, how do they see and hear us? Do they actually physically see us? Like, we don't supposedly very often see an apparition, right? Mm. Okay, but we hear noises. So are they on the other side and can they see us, or are they in the same situation where they're just hearing us knock or they're hearing us talk? This is intriguing.
Why I really just keep coming back to ghost theory, because they ask these questions.
Yes, they do. They're one of the few teams that do.
How are you perceiving this room?
That's right.
Can you see us? Can you hear us? And these are questions that they ask.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's what.
And these are the pertinent questions.
That's right, because and that's intrigued me, and that's where
do you know you are dead?
Exactly. Do you know you're dead? And if you don't, and this is what I'm saying, are they sitting in that room? Like, there was a house that they were in. It looked like it had been abandoned since the 90s, right? Mm. And there was a particular room where there was noises and there was energy. And that's my point, Bruce. Is there a person sitting on that couch, right? He's died, but he's kind of in the time when he died, 1993. Doing whatever he does, his crossword, or he's watching TV, or he's listening to his radio. That's what he thinks is happening. Because of
But he's hearing his voice,
exactly.
And he thinks they might be a ghost.
Bingo! That's what I'm saying. Because maybe the dimensional thing, maybe we just moved to another dimension when we die. And he's sitting there and he's going, my house is haunted. What the fuck's going on?
There's that great movie called The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really... Yeah. If you're interested in the paranormal and you like horror movies, The Others is a very good psychological horror movie.
I mean, to me, that's the sort of thing I think of. If I pass away... Am I going to perceive everything that I see around? That's what I'm talking about, these 16th century guys. You're in a castle in bloody England that's haunted. You're doing a ghost hunt or a paranormal research, let's call it that. And there's a ghost. Is he walking around the castle thinking that he's still in 16th century England? Everything he sees is that. He sees you. He thinks you're a bloody demon or a spirit or whatever.
Exactly, yes.
So is this why... when they're shouting out or they're trying to communicate, calling out, often they don't get a lot of responses because the other person might be sitting there going, "Oh, there's a ghost! There's a ghost!"
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
it's really the whole thing is really intriguing. You know,
It is. It's what's so interesting.
Yeah, and you know whether or not there'll ever be any definitive proof is
Well, no. This is it. We're
know.
not going to get the answers, but that's why mysteries are interesting.
Yeah.
You know, this is the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
I love mysteries. I don't want to know the answers.
So you-
don't give me the answer.
So you think that no one will ever definitively? define
I
it?
think we might crack parts of it. You know, like some of these things, like like the idea of the impression in a window or a stone tape.
Yeah.
You know, we might,
or audio
Yeah.
sort of things that repeat
Yes.
itself. Yeah. See, the other one that you talk about that is battlefields. You know, specifically Gettysburg, where they often claim to see people marching. Now, is that just a recording of an energy thing?
I think some sort of recording
Yeah.
thing is the most
Yeah.
likely
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah.
I also do believe, if there is such a thing as the paranormal, that, like you're saying with your dog,
Yeah.
that often when things die, there is often this, in the 24 or 48 hours, there is often, it does seem to be some sort of a visit.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very common occurrence around the world, and it has been since human history. So I do think if there is some sort of life after death,
For want of a better term.
for want of a better term, it's very fleeting. And the idea of 400-year-old ghosts hanging around, not having it.
See, I don't know. Yeah. See, to me, that just
There's stories built on top of stories, and people see what they want to
Well, see,
see.
that's
and
what-
you're an atmospheric building. And
well, see, that's where it gets back to what I spoke about earlier. Where are they just sitting in another dimension, thinking that they're still living their life, and that's why they've been there for 400 years because they're just going through their daily routine, and in another dimension, not necessarily, and they haven't necessarily lived in our dimension, but they're in another dimension going through their thing daily, and that's why they're around for so long.
Yeah.
But then you see, you've got this other situation where we spoke about earlier, where some locations it just seems to fade, where eventually there's nothing. Is that the same thing where eventually the energy just fades away, or the spirit eventually moves somewhere else?
That's why I'm interested in poltergeists, because they're so evidential. You know, you can have a camera in a room, and if there's a poltergeist there, you'll capture things. Often they're very short-lived.
Yeah.
You know, they might last a few months.
Yeah.
So I think poltergeists, to me, are the most interesting phenomenon, and that you do actually have something physical happening. So that's why I've always had this fascination for poltergeists, much more than ghosts.
Of course, getting on the poltergeist thing, you go back to the Enfield haunting, you know, where in recent years it's come out that maybe that was some sort of psychic energy from the girl that was causing that, and perhaps it's energy from a person that's now causing things.
Both the sisters have stood by it. I think it's a fascinating case. Morris Gross, Playfair has stood by it. There's a huge amount of evidence, and there's a lot of good stuff come out even recently. There's been released documentary stuff from the time. It's up on YouTube. The Enfield haunting, the poltergeist there, I think is one of the best cases there's ever been in terms of documentation.
I know a lot of people thought maybe it was psychic energy from one of the girls, and they weren't aware of them having psychic energy.
That's one of the strongest theories about poltergeist is that somehow it's coming from a young person, usually going through puberty. There's another very famous case of a young guy. Oh God, I can't remember his name. Switch me. Very, very evidential case. Oh God, what's his name? A young man who he wrote a book when he was about 18 called The Link.
Oh yeah.
And then Matthew Manning, and then he became a medium, and now he's a psychic healer. Huge amount of evidence around Matthew Manning. So if you're interested in paranormal, I suggest you check out Matthew Manning. I think Matthew Manning, Enfield case, very fascinating cases.
Yeah, and again, though, bursts of energy. It's more.
It's more like it's coming from a living brain than a dead one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like if it's dead, right? Then it gets back to your theory of low intelligence. You know what I'm saying? Because whatever happens, it's not very.
But in the Enfield case,
Yeah.
the young woman who could do the voices, which is a fascinating thing to watch her do. It's actually quite scary, and how is she doing that?
Yeah.
How is she flicking between this very horrible, nasty old man's voice and her?
Mind you, there are people around that do that for a living,
Yeah,
so
but-
perhaps she's just got that talent.
Yeah, but this is before all that. This is like, how is she doing that? It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
The fact she's doing it.
Yeah.
And she did come up with evidence, that the ghost, I died in a chair in the living room, I became blind, and the sun came along and correlated all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's Enfield case has got a lot going for it.
Yeah, yeah. It's the poltergeist thing is an interesting thing again, and that's, as you say, it's energy. But yeah, the psychic thing I still don't buy. So often you see on these TV shows, we've gone to this place and we're getting our psychic along, and she doesn't know anything about it. And I'm like, crap. Here's a phone.
Yeah.
Google the friggin' place. She could Google the place in the car when she's not on camera and walk around going, "This is Bruce's house," and blah blah.
Most haunted work that out after a while.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just the whole, and I don't want to denigrate these people because, to be honest, I've met some people who claim to be psychic, and I think they really believe they are. Okay, and maybe they are receiving maybe that they're able to receive, energy patterns that are recorded in that, but
It can't be proved.
no, it can't be proved. That's the big thing to me. Is I'm like you. Let's see the evidence in front of us. A noise, And again, a lot of these ghost hunter teams where they do the knocking and they try and knock back. Okay, sometimes you hear, you got to knock back. And it seems to be like, I don't like this word, but the teams will go, that was on command. To start with, if I'm a spirit, you're not commanding me to do anything. I'll come back if I want to come. But, I don't know. Sometimes maybe it's just a fluke that he's happened to knock and the building happens to creak at the same time. Or as when we did the Globe one that night where Mark said, this is the quietest building I've ever been in. Was that the paranormal? I've said that to Mark. Was that paranormal? The fact that the building did nothing, there was nothing. Was that the paranormal? Because buildings always creak. What was going on? Just.
Well, as I said, we're all living in different dimensions.
Yeah.
I've got no idea what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
We could both be asleep now. We could be dead.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on?
Bingo! That's just what I'm saying. That's kind of what I was saying before. How do we know we're not sitting there? And when we see a ghost, it's actually somebody in another dimension on a paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
The whole thing is intriguing, mate. It really is.
The only thing we know is the Descartes says is that we think. Although someone said the other day, and I can't remember exactly how they put it, but that Descartes got it wrong, and there are clearly some people out there. I mean, some of the leadership in America or Israel might be cases in point. There are clearly people out there who the evidence that exists is that they don't think.
No, that's right. We'll be right back here on Paranormal After Dark. I'm going to segue into something else that Bruce may or may not have an interest in.
Are you prepared? Something's falling for you inside your head. Me creeping up now, take you on the leaf ground. Here I am, yes I am, falling from my heart. to take you underneath the ground. I start to ask myself this: are you prepared? Something's falling for you inside your head. Me creeping up now, take you underneath ground.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.
That's me, I'm here, and that was Christchurch Band and good friends of mine, Sins of Eve, with Creeping, here on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. The final part now of my chat with Bruce Mahalaski from the Dunedin Museum of Natural History and the Dunedin Strange Occurrences Society continues.
I want to talk to you now about something that I've always had an interest in: extraterrestrials. Now, what's your opinion on, firstly, do you think we could have been visited, right, at any time? I'm not necessarily saying now or in the past or whatever. And two, in this whole universe we are you one of these people that thinks this is the only place that's got life?
Okay, well, long story short, it's possible we have been visited.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe we're the only place that's got life.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm praying to my non-existent God that some bacteria will be found on another planet in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think that would be quite a blow to modern religion.
Well, see, this is the theory I have. Like you talk about religion. The people that have the biggest thing to lose, right? We'll go back to Roswell and all these ones where there's allegedly been something and governments are supposedly hiding it, right? Okay. The biggest people that have got the most to lose are the three major religions of the world, right? Because their story is based on a deity that created the earth 6,000 years ago, and this is the special place where everything was created. Now, the universe is big. We know that. We can see that. We can observe it. We can measure it, right? Are you telling me that in all of these stars and planets, we're the only intelligent life? And, before scientists will say, oh, yes, well, you can't travel in space and time. Look, the level of development that humankind is at now, right, and the age of our sun and our planet, there's stars and planets out there that are a lot older. How do we know that beings haven't evolved that are 10,000s of years ahead of us that have figured out a way, a little bit like Star Trek, it gets back to Star Trek again, who can bend time and space and walk from A to B and come here? And particularly if you look in the old days, even when I was a little kid, I used to sit there and go, this story that they're telling me about this God coming from the sky and smoke and fire, my first impression was, that's a rocket. I remember saying to my grandmother, that's a rocket. What are you talking about?
Eric Von Daniken, he went down all that path.
But I mean, okay, some of his stuff was far-fetched, but I mean, a lot of the basic theory of it was, look, if I'm putting myself...
Gods are aliens.
If I'm putting myself in ancient Jerusalem, right, I'm a man wandering around in the desert, and I've never seen a spaceship. I've never seen an aircraft, right?
Yeah.
Something comes down, my brain goes click, 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 click.
This is a very common explanation, though. So I'm going to say, just jumping ahead, that if you are a creature that has invented faster than light travel or can move between dimensions, you have travelled the universe. You have seen planets like this come and go thousands of times before. So we might be like a Class K 62 planet or something. You're not going to be coming down here and putting things up people's bottoms. You know,
No, I don't buy into that.
No, we would just be a blip on their radar.
Yeah, I don't
they
buy-
would be off doing much more
Yeah.
interesting things. And the idea that they would crash these spaceships
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
and reveal themselves, they could be standing here right now,
Yeah,
and they would be so far advanced
That's
that,
right.
that we wouldn't be able to comprehend
I don't
what they were.
I don't buy into the abduction thing necessarily, right? But I think in the past, right, to me, okay, like I say, I'm standing there, I see this thing come down. I don't know that it's a rocket. In my mind, it's got a little bit like the Native Americans with the Thunderbird, right? Or the Hindus with the Vimanas. Gods flew around in Vimanas, right? Now, because my ancient brain doesn't go, that's a rocket ship, that's an airplane, I don't know, okay? Now, or Quetzalcoatl with the Incas and stuff, you know, and the Mayans. Perhaps it's back in that time when we were more primitive. There was more humanoids on Earth. There was Neanderthal. There was all sorts of these other ones. Perhaps someone visited, and this is me, and you might think I'm mad about this. Perhaps we're the result of genetic engineering on this planet.
No, friends of mine, but it's just as a scientific rationalist who studied zoology and stuff.
Yeah.
Embryology, you just
Yeah.
need to look at the course of an embryo.
Yeah.
We are basically, you
Yeah.
know, a chimpanzee that isn't even a naked ape.
Yeah.
The idea that there's somehow been some, that we are somehow some sort of advancement on other primates.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
Not,
fair enough.
Not buying it.
But you could buy that there was visits in the past. I mean, if we're more primitive, you come along and you
Well,
kind of think,
we're never going to know. I mean,
No,
we were
no,
sitting there in front of our campfires
Yeah.
in the dark, and the fire would be a very
Exactly,
compelling thing. It'd be
exactly.
like a television, a
Exactly.
computer of today,
Yeah.
and we'd be talking, and then suddenly there might be a very powerful thunderstorm or something like that, or you might see a ball of light,
Yeah.
something, and that would be extremely frightening back then.
oh yeah, for sure.
So, I don't think we need to be looking for aliens. Before aliens, they were called, witches and wizards and
Yeah.
ghosts or what have you. It just seems to be a modern sci-fi interpretation of things we can't explain.
Well, a big thanks there to Bruce, and an amazing museum. If you're in Dunedin, 61 Royal Terrace, check it out, the Dunedin Museum of Natural Mystery. You really need to get down there because there's some amazing stuff in there, eh? Bruce is a great guy. He'll welcome you, probably make you a cuppa. We can sit and chat with him there. And fascinating theories he's got there on things. And as they don't always agree with mine, but then that's part of, sitting and chatting with someone. You can have a debate and you can have opposing views and be cordial like that. So big thanks to Bruce. This has been Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie. I'll see you next time. And remember, I have questions.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie.